honestly, Josh, you see him in training. I've never seen anybody so quick. I've never seen anybody so powerful.
This is McClaren Performance.
Hello and welcome back to the McClaren Performance podcast. It's been a while since I've done that intro, so I can't quite remember how it went, but there we go. Me and Dad just watched the England versus Iran game. Really good game for England, obviously. Some really good goals in there as well, but conceding a few as well. Me and Dad are going to go through it all today. But yeah, Dad, welcome back to the podcast. It's been, how long has it been? 6 months, something? I don't know.
Must be 6 months.
Well,
so, miss chatting to you, really.
Well, you've been busy, haven't you? You've been making more friends, really. Better people to talk to, probably.
Yeah, it's been what you call a hectic first 6 months, first part of the season.
Yeah,
I think many challenges we've had. The start was a difficult one. Recovered from that, and then got a knockback against Man City, and recovered from that. So I think that's been a positive in the reaction of the team.
Yeah,
going back after setbacks. Eric has been very strong in his convictions. In terms of his principles, his way of playing, what I admire about him is basically the three things that he's done. He's the conviction to every day work on the principles, the philosophy, the way of playing, and sticking to that, even though it was a bad start, even though at times like Man City, Aston Villa, it didn't quite work. He's stuck by them principles, establishing the rules or the behaviours that he wants to see. But I think he's doing that. And also players who are good enough, they get to play. Yeah. So the emergence of young talent like Garnacho shows from his academy upbringing at 20, and also at Ajax, where they introduced a lot of players, young players. He wants to bring that to United. So I think a lot of positives, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been hard work, challenging, but very, very rewarding, because these players and the players that he's brought in, the signings, the dressing room is excellent. The togetherness, the spirit of the team, in terms of the principle of United is never give in. And we're kind of proving that with the results that we're getting, late winners, late equaliser at Chelsea, a late winner at Fulham. So we're inching our way there. And as I say, it's nice now, the World Cup, get a little bit of a break before we come back, and nice to be back on the podcast with you.
I think watching from the outside, if we are going to touch on Man United, the most impressive thing has been, you expect that time to develop a way of playing. You can kind of see, it's interesting to watch that from the start of the season, say, to now. You can actually watch it happening on the pitch in terms of the change of play and what they're actually developing. But the best thing I've seen is that consistency with regards to conceding goals and then coming back from that as well. That's been the most impressive thing. And that, I think maybe what we talked about before as well, that's the one thing that they need to improve on massively. And I think I've seen Erik ten Hag talk about that in press conferences as well, is to come back from setback. We talk about with athletes, but it's the most important thing for that team as well, to expect and be accepting of setbacks, and then to be aware and then accept it, be aware to plan out of it and figure out how to deal with those situations is the key thing. And that's probably a fantastic foundation to have, really, to keep progressing the way that you are at the moment. But yeah, it's quite interesting to have that little bit of insight on Man United as well. So fair enough.
Not too much, Josh.
Oh, we don't want to get into trouble,
we could be.
Right, we'll go into the England game, because it was a really good England game. I was talking to a mate before, and I thought I've been quite optimistic of England in terms of how they're going to do in this competition, a bit more so than I think most people have. In the build up to the game, there's a lot of people talking quite negatively. I mean, yeah, they've had a really bad run in the Nations League before that. But I've always found, especially with Gareth Southgate's kind of England, they always seem to do so well anyway in tournaments, regardless of how they've been doing in friendlies and things like that. So I was expecting, and I was hoping for like maybe a 1-0 or 2-0. I wasn't expecting, I think, such really good attacking football, especially considering the way that we played before. I think the most interesting aspect, and I've been up in my game on the tactical aspect a bit while you've been away, so I think I can talk a bit about it. The going to four at the back was quite an interesting change, whether he's going to go 3 or 4. I was looking, while the game was on, actually, I was looking at the past Nations League games, looking at what he actually used. I think he switched quite 50-50 between 3 at the back and 4 at the back for a lot of games. Obviously, didn't really win a single one of those, so none of them really came up as good options, and it was changing quite a lot of players as well. But I thought that system worked really well, and I thought I know it's Iran, I know they didn't play very well either, but I thought we were still quite dominated. It's definitely games like that where we haven't dominated at all, and it's rarely a case where we really dominate a game with England anyway. But I thought, yeah, really promising stuff, exactly what we needed really to kick on and build that confidence going into the rest. And what were your thoughts of the whole game, really?
I think, before this tournament, I was quite pleased in terms of the form of England and the defeats they were having, the criticism they were getting, because he was just experimenting in them games. And unfortunately, I lost a few of them. But he always knew what the squad was roughly, but he always knows what his best team is and what the best subs are. And I think that their form put all expectations from the media down and from the fans. So we've entered this tournament, we got to the final of the Euros, should have won the Euros, and how we're not kind of being talked about as one of the favourites for the World Cup was because of that form. And I think it was terrific. And in tournaments, once you enter tournaments, momentum is key. And your first game is absolutely vital because you grow each game. So that start was important. And we were all interested to see what the team was, the formation was, and the tactics were. And I think because Iran are not a good team. They're not.
That was pretty evident on the day, I think.
Their basic principles of controlling the ball, passing the ball, they were poor in quality, but you still have to beat the opponent in front of you. Yeah. With them setting up a 5 at the back, 4 across the midfield, and 1 up front, I thought it was perfect for us to play the 4-3-3 formation. Because when you play against a 5-4-1, it's a fullback game. It's a fullback game. And if you play with wing backs, you're only playing wing back against wing back. If you play a 4 and 2 fullbacks and 2 wingers, you're playing 2v1 against the wing backs. So we always had an overload in that area in terms of always having width. And we had speed in the wide areas. We had Sterling, we had Saka, and then we overlaps from Trippier and Shaw. Ideal example was the first goal with the overlap of Luke Shaw. Great ball into the box and an advancing midfield player. And I think that was the key, was we got an extra man in midfield, or even an extra 2 men in midfield, but they were only playing 2 in there, trying to play narrow, but we had 3 in terms of Rice, Bellingham and Mount. So we always had the advantage. But the key was that Mount and Bellingham are attacking players. They can score goals. So they were what we call the 2-8s or even the 2-10s, and they were allowed to get in the box. So we had 3 strikers. We had 2 wide players, Saka, Sterling, who also come inverted and get into the box. We had Kane central. We had 2. So we had 5 attackers, where when we've generally played a 5-2-3 or a 5-3-2, we've generally only had 3 attackers, genuine goal scorers. So that for me was the key, that we could afford to do that. So the formation, going into the game was excellent, dominated the game. And also in terms of when I think about formation, the subs were, this is why we've got a chance of winning this tournament.
Yeah.
Because we take off Sterling, take off Saka, take off Kane, and you're bringing on Rashford, who looked very good. You're bringing on Grealish, you're bringing on Foden, you bring on Callum Wilson. I mean, the bench is just loaded with talent, and that's such a strength going into a tournament. They're all fit.
Yeah,
they're all, you can see the subs coming on ready and impacting when they do. And I think overall, the start of the tournament has been excellent, albeit against a weaker opponent.
I think one thing with that, like you said, you've got those options on the bench, but what you've got especially is really good attacking players. And is that really why, and what I guess a lot of fans have been demanding, that Southgate plays with more attacking style of play, so you can utilise those players? Is he right in doing that? Because I think what I've seen is, like you said, the 4-3-3 is very much a way Liverpool play, at City would play. But the argument is really that they've had so much time to practice that and develop that, so that defensively they can keep their shape, they can work like that. But with England, they don't have that much time. And that's why really they've benefited from utilising, 5 at the back, 5-2-3, 5-3-2, like you said. And it maintains that shape. Like my argument for Southgate has always been that, yes, he plays defensively, but that's what you need to do in tournaments. You keep a clean sheet, you get 1 or 2 goals. That's how he's progressed so well. It seems like he's changed his tune a little bit here in being more attacking. Do you think this is something, a formation, a way of playing that he will maintain, or will he adapt to different games? Like you said, this formation really suited this game, or do you think it'll change for another one? Or do you think, right, this is the formation that we are going to stick to, and every game we're going to keep attacking?
No, I think he'll adapt.
Yeah.
He knows that. I mean, the key thing, two key things really stood out from the game for me, and in terms of having to adapt, say, in other games, is one, yes, we were good in possession. We had 84% possession in the first half, and we moved it well. We overloaded in the wide areas. We overloaded in midfield, got the ball in the box and overloaded in the box against a very poor team who were low block, who their only chance of scoring was from transitions, and our rest defence was very good in terms of that first half. So a weak opponent. What impressed me, yes, in possession, everything, but was out of possession. Because with that formation, it's easier to press with a 4-3-3 because you're immediately starting with 3 pressed high against their 5. And if they spread to a 3, you're 3 against 3. Fullbacks have to sprint and quickly get onto the wing backs if they ever build up, but Iran couldn't build up. Yeah. And so we pressed very, very well. And it was easy to do that. When you're a 5-3-2 or a 5-4-1, it's very difficult to press. In fact, you can't do it. So that gives you that. So we pressed very well. Our out of possession showed me the intensity in which we played. It's very difficult playing opponents like that who sit deep. And the play becomes slow and methodical, and the pressing doesn't become intense. You're just waiting for the opponent to give you the ball back. But the key thing, what impressed me, was the way that England hunted the ball. We call it counter press. So they counter pressed, won the ball back in 5 seconds, and the intensity for 90. I won't even say 95 minutes because I think the game went on for about 2 hours.
It's about 120 minutes, I think it was. It's about half an hour added on.
Exactly. So, but we pressed and showed that intensity the whole game.
Yeah.
So the attitude of the players was great. And from that out of possession, and why I think that Southgate will adapt and go back to other formations like he's done with 3 at the back, is because we conceded 2 goals and should have conceded a third, but from a great save from Pickford. And what worried me in the goals from a very poor team who couldn't really attack was that twice they got behind our defence, our back four, into areas where one scored and Pickford made a good save.
Yeah.
So if I was, and I know Gareth will be, and I know the players will be, straight away after the game, what do you focus on? And one, you focus on, okay, job done, professional job done. We're expected to beat Iran. We beat Iran. In terms of we scored goals, that's what the nation wants to see. But he'll be moving on, and he'll be looking at them two chances, and he'll be focusing on that, and he'll be telling the team, we can't defend like that, even for a second. Can't dip like that, because the squad now must, it's one thing that we've been talking a lot about United, is win or lose, move on quickly, get your feet back on the ground, or don't worry about defeats and worry about the next game. And that's what he'll be doing. And so I look at the game and think, if it had been 6-0, 7-0, and they'd had no chances, then there's nothing to work on. And it's very difficult then to move on. But there's something to work on. And I think they'll be focusing on that for the next game.
That was definitely my thoughts towards the end of the game, was not necessarily the penalty, because I think that was quite a decision to make anyway. But especially the first goal that they conceded, I thought a little bit about that. And there's aspects to work on. We did so well going forward. It was worrying to see us concede as well against a team that we shouldn't really be conceding against at all. A clean sheet would have been a bit of a priority in that game. But generally pretty optimistic anyway. What did you make? Because you'll have a specific insight into this of Rashford coming on. I think scoring a goal within the first two touches that he made. I've been really, from the outside, looking at Rashford, I think I've been really impressed with. It comes across as someone, to me, who's working really hard at the moment to get back into a way of playing that he was before. I don't believe he was in the squad last time England went out with the Nations League and everything like that, but getting back into it now and making an impact again, he's really impressed me. Just again from the outside, really, in terms of how he's really fitting with Ten Hag's team at the moment, but the work that he's putting in, I think even before pre-season and everything like that, I was expecting something from him because he looked like he was working so hard. What are you happy for him for getting that goal, and is it reward really for the work he's put in?
Yeah, it's I was impressed and pleased for all three of the United England players, because in terms of Harry, he's had a difficult time at Man United. Started the season, was unfortunate, has kept a great attitude, a captain's attitude during the period that he's been out, got an opportunity to come back in, got injured, went out again, got an opportunity again. And it's not quite at the present moment worked out for him at United, but it will do.
Yeah.
So he's gone to England, and he's always criticised for England, always.
Yeah.
Should he be playing? Of course he should be playing. He's the best defender that we've got for England. I've seen that in training and in games, and I've known Harry a long time. So I was delighted to see him back in the team and giving a performance that was commanding, I would say, in both boxes.
Yeah.
I think just before the goal, I know the player run behind him, but I do know that he suffered from a little bit of concussion and blurry-eyed and wanted to come off before that. Anyway, that aside, I think, he will grow and grow, like the team will grow and grow in this tournament. That was good. And Luke Shaw, similar, didn't have the best of starts. Malacia came in and was playing. But again, he's knuckled down. He's worked hard. He's got really, really fit. He's the fittest I've seen him. Been excellent in training every day to work to get back into the team, got back into the team. Really showed his power and strength. And I think he had a cameo role for the last Nations League game when he came on. I think it was against Germany. Played very well. And again, proved that he's adaptable. He can play left back in a 4. He can play left back in a 5. Yeah. Because going forward, he's very, very good.
Yeah.
He got an assist. And when he's like that, and on he's for me, and I keep saying to him, you are the best left back in the Premier League without a shadow of a doubt. And it's up to him to prove that week in, week out. So delighted with him. And Rash is the same. We came in, he was very quiet. I think he'd been hurt by a lot of things last season. Took a while to build that trust. But from day one, his application in training has been excellent. And we saw in pre-season glimpses of what he can be and is.
Yeah.
And he's grown and grown and grown. And honestly, Josh, you see him in training. I've never seen anybody so quick. I've never seen anybody so powerful.
Yeah. And
he's got, there's more to come.
Yeah.
I keep saying he has so much potential that we're hardly seeing any of it at the present moment.
Yeah.
He's got so much more that he can give. He's proved that in little glimpses, but once he gets consistency, he's a real asset. And you saw him coming on. That was a cameo role, came on the right-hand side. And we always joke with him about going through on goal and normally wanting to try and score with power instead of guile and placing the ball in the net.
Yeah.
And normally he comes inside on his right foot and it's power. And I always say, when you hit power, it goes centrally or it misses. You can't control it. If you would guile and you steer it in or stroke it in, it's got more accuracy. It's delighted to see him coming inside on his left foot and just stroke that ball into the corner.
I thought he took a lesson from Anthony there, going to the left, into the left.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. But I think he's one of them players anywhere along the front three, he's always going to be a threat.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting to get that sort of insight in how those players have developed. If I had to ask one question about Man United, because where we talked about before the start of the season, talking about building winning cultures and things, for me, just even with a lack of, if there was no involvement with a team, I think it's a really good case study to look at from the outside of building a winning culture, changing the identity of a team and working with a top manager, really, like Eric Ten Hag. We talk about what top managers do, and you kind of got a front seat there of seeing one implement something in a club and changing its identity. What have you learned really so far from being there, from being such a top, high performance environment like that? What are the lessons really you've taken from it so far?
I think the key thing is strong leadership. Really, Eric has come into a difficult situation. Everybody was down, disillusioned with what went on last season and wondering what was going to happen this season. And just very, very strong leadership. Strong in terms of principles, how we want to play, strong in terms of rules, behaviors, we must follow them, and strong in terms of if you run, you play, and if you're good enough, you play, and everything's about training and everything's about applying yourself on the training ground, which will then manifest itself onto game day. Same principles I had 20 years ago when I first worked at Manchester United with Sir Alex. The intensity of training was such that became automatic in the games. And I think that's what you're seeing. It's that intensity that they've gotten. The squad have grown. And so much that the biggest thing for me is seeing Marcus Rashford with a smile on his face.
That's what I think when I saw him. I think it was a game where I saw him miss a chance and I saw him like laughing and smiling about missing a chance. That is like a real big change. And I think that kind of foundation makes a big difference in your performance also, to be a bit more accepting of mistakes like that, but being present still in the game, enjoying it still, being engaged with what's going on. Instead of, like, generally what we talk about with the entire team is being able to take that setback and accept it and move forward with it. I saw that and I thought that's a different kind of player now, and you can kind of see it comes to fruition a little bit more.
I think, body language is massive in in anything in sport business. And you saw last season the body language wasn't good. And I think that's one of the first things Eric addressed was the body language. And that has taken a while, and that is, starts in training, starts every day.
Yeah.
And there's no better body language than playing football and people are smiling and people are enjoying it. And you saw that today. And that, that as a coach, that pleases you the most.
Yeah.
That, a player is on the field, he's enjoying his football, he's playing with a smile. And when you do that, you get the best out of players.
Yeah. I think you've turned it quite well back into England there. That's what we want to talk about. It's the England environment, and I guess it kind of relates a lot to building that environment at Manchester United as well. And that's what Gareth's done so well. And you watch that, despite that poor performance really in the build-up to the World Cup, you still had that buzz around. You could see the players still enjoying it, still relaxed, still trusting the manager as well. I think that's something that you look for in a manager. We always talk about the tactical aspect of things and everything like that, but the ability to engage a group of players, to have them believe in you, to give them, to have a manager that gives you belief in what you're doing as well, and create a culture and an environment where that identity is there. You just talked about Manchester United of old 20 years ago and kind of finding that identity again. And it's the same with England, really. What Gareth's done there is brought a real identity to the team. And it shows in the performances. You can't play that kind of attacking, confident, free-flowing kind of football if you don't have that feeling of being comfortable in that environment at the same time. It's why we always talk about, as soon as players go from the club and they put the England shirt on, they almost look like a different player. You just touched on Harry Maguire there. And like you said, he's such a commanding performance, so good going forward also. And it's almost like, that psychological difference of being in one environment to the other. And we always talk about it's either 70 or 80% of our human behavior is determined by the environment around us. And you can really see that when it comes to England. And that's why Gareth, I think, does so well in picking the team that he does, picking Sterling again, picking Maguire as always. It's quite an interesting conversation to have in terms of people would always want to pick the players that are in form at the moment, but he's really got an idea of the ones that he can rely on, the ones that he trusts, but also a team, a starting 11 that works well together, that understands each other. It's one thing playing football, it's another thing learning to then play that football with another person. And they've already got that learning from maybe 2 or 3 tournaments now from before, building up to this one. So every tournament, the same players, the same consistencies, building a solid team, really, it looks like.
He's had these players for many years. It's not just while he's been England manager, but he's grown up with these players.
Yeah.
He was the under-21s coach. He was the head of development in terms of the FA years ago. So he knows all these players. He's brought them through. He's got a great relationship with them, knows their stories, which is vitally important. But I think someone mentioned it during commentary in the game. They're playing like a club team.
Yeah.
And when I speak to Harry, Luke, Rashi, they all talk about that, the atmosphere of England. It is like a club, the environment. And I always remember, and I've heard it quite a few times now from ex-players, other managers. Before there used to be rivalry between Manchester United, Liverpool, then Chelsea came through, and there was always that rivalry. And we never quite focused or clicked in terms of England being a club when it came together. It was always still, well, United players there, Liverpool players there, Chelsea players there, and the other players over there. So it was, and that's fine. You always get that because you gravitate towards your mates. But when you're in that, you've got to come together as England, the club England. And I think that's what they've created. They've talked about that. They've talked about the shirt. And, once they leave their club, they change their heads and they put the England head on.
Yeah.
And they get you don't have to like each other, but you have to respect each other and you have to work together. And that's what they look like they're doing. Whereas when I reflect on my time with England as assistant and manager, and also future years, we never focused and never concentrated enough on creating the atmosphere first. And that's what Gareth has done really, really well, along with all his staff, along with the FA, along with all the things that they've put in place from 10 years ago when we were failing all the time, starting with Dan Ashworth and continuing all the way through. So many things have been put in place to get the quality of player first and foremost that we've got. So we've got a bench like we've got. We haven't just got 15, 16 players. If you get injuries, that really weakens the team. Nothing of the sort with this. And it's developing a club atmosphere. So the players are better. You see the gulf now between the top players and Iran, 20th in the world. I don't know how they are 20th, but 20th in the world, and Wales are in the top 20. USA are in the top 20. So they're going to be tests but you can see the difference in quality. That's why we have a chance of winning this World Cup. We are one of, I always used to say, we are one of 5 or 6 teams with luck, with a good run of injuries, to keep players that we keep fit. We have a possibility of winning this tournament.
I think you touched on it there, really. And what I always talk about with my thing is that culture, mind, action, result, and the foundation of that being the culture and environment. I hope Eric Ten Hag don't mind me saying, because I was talking to him, and that's what we talked about, was how important culture is. And he said, for a psychologist, understand culture is the most important thing. The environment, the interaction of people, because like I kind of say as well, it's the foundation, I think, of everything. And like you said there with England, that's the foundation from which you build consistency, the foundation from which you have the right mindset, the focus, the relaxed and comfortable feeling being on the pitch, which then feeds into consistent actions and then the consistent results from that as well. I'm on the same page as you in terms of, I think England have a really good chance. It always comes down to luck with tournaments. It's so hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. And that's what we talk about with that, is to not think of the uncontrollables, but the controllables. And in terms of what is in control for England, they control everything really well, from the culture, from their own individual psychology to their actual actions on the pitch and off the pitch as well, really controlling that really well. And from that, getting some consistency. So yeah, like yourself, I'm pretty optimistic about how things go, but then you always say that and you get proven wrong, don't you? So we just keep it a bit reserved.
Yeah, let's not get carried away. And I don't think the players or Gareth will get carried away with that.
No, I don't think so.
It's a little bit like, I watched the first game in Qatar against who was it? Ecuador, I think it was, and Qatar. And I was in Qatar a year ago exactly when the Arab Cup was on. So I've seen many of these teams, like Iran, like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, and they were quite impressive in the tournaments amongst themselves, but the gulf you've seen is absolutely enormous. So I'm sure we're not going to get carried away by this. Bigger tests, USA and Wales, but momentum is key. Luck is key. Keeping away from injuries is key. And I think the key thing for England, they've created over the years a safe environment, and you can see that the players like being together. They like the staff. You see the pictures, and you see everybody, yes, working hard, but with a smile on the face.
I think to finish it off, I'll do some quick questions, because people did ask some questions. I thought it'd be good to just touch on them a little bit, but we'll fire them out quickly because we talked quite a lot there. And one that kind of feeds into that, we talked about Gareth, talked about Eric Ten Hag as well. And I talked about recently as well, is what attributes would a good coach have? What are like those 3 or 4 things that you'd say that's what a good coach is? I find you can tell quite quickly when a coach is good. I don't know, I can never put my finger on it, but it's always that initial conversation straight, you go, all right, they're really good in terms of their engagement and things like that. But what is it for you that you go, they're my things I look for in a good coach?
I think there are many things, but I think 4 key things. One is knowledge. I always remember becoming a coach and that first game, first coaching session with the players, knowing that, wow, this is another career from playing. But there was so much to learn, and I was a sponge. I was a learner. I was a reader. I was going to conferences. I was like just wanting to learn and just get all that knowledge of coaching, of players, different sports. So I think knowledge is key. Once you're into a subject and you love that subject, as it's not work, it's not hard work. You've got the energy for it all the time. And that leads into my second thing about, you've got to have a work ethic. And having a work ethic means being energized, having energy. I always talk about that now when I'm experienced, older coach, been around. I always think energy is key, and I'll stop when I lose my energy. But I'm so enthused by young players. Working with Eric, he's got so many good ideas, different way of playing, different principles, philosophy. I'm learning again. It's a sponge again.
Yeah.
So many different things. Football has moved on so much, even from when I worked with him the first time. And so having that work ethic is really key. And unfortunately, with that work ethic, you don't get balance. And everybody says you need life balance, and you don't. Yeah. You have to sacrifice. And that from the years, growing up with me here, there, and everywhere, and working. Unfortunately, to be successful, you have to have that work ethic, and you have to sacrifice. And in the end, you hope that's worth it. But that's the key thing. And the third, what I've found through the years, is being adaptable. Is not being blinkered and not being focused just on one thing. And this is my way. This is the highway. It's having adaptability. Individuals, you can't coach one individual or speak to one individual like you can the other individual. And it's being adaptable, going into different situations. And people often said to me, and I think that's a strength so far that I bring, is that with my experience, I've been in just about every situation. And I think I can adapt to just about every situation that arises and be able to find a solution for that. So adaptability is key. It's one of the reasons why, the gaffer, Sir Alex Ferguson, was, 27 years at Man United and started off in Scotland. How are you successful for that amount of time? Yes, you have certain principles and you've got convictions of them principles and philosophy, but you're adaptable. And that's what he did. How can you survive all them years without being adaptable and building different teams and knowing when to get rid of some players and build another team? So adaptability is key. And then the fourth most important, communication skills.
Yeah.
It's about getting your vision, getting your message over as a coach. And you have to be able to do that in terms of communication. And it doesn't have to, I'm not talking about being charismatic or anything like that. It's how you get your message over to each individual and how you speak to each individual. And now with the influx of foreign players as well, that's what I found going to United. The signings we've made are all, Brazilian, Portuguese, Argentinian. They're all different languages, and communication is the key to that. One of the most important things to any young coach I talk about is learn another language. because you'll need it in the modern day of football.
Yeah, that's one we've never managed, is it? English for us.
Struggle with English. Struggle with that.
No. I was gonna ask more questions, but I think that covers literally everything. Like one or two into life as well. I think they all apply to everything outside of sport as well. I think one thing you would have added onto communication, which I'll say as well, is that simplicity in communication also, and being simple. That's like you said, being able to communicate. It's like every coach has their tactics and that way of playing. Everyone really knows what that is, but to communicate that to 11 people on the pitch, to make them do that, the simplicity they have to talk in. I use that with psychology also. The key for me is all that stuff in the background of theory and everything, but it's just that simplicity of saying the right thing at the right time and then communicating all those ideas in the most simple way. I think is so important. But yeah, I think
just to finish the strength of Eric is the messages that he has is repetition, repetition.
Yeah.
Repeat. And I've, before games, and I've known him in some respect, repeating the same message in a different way each time. A big strength.
Well, thank you, Dad, for another interesting conversation. A load of insight there into what is going on at Manchester United, things happening in England as well. It's really interesting to hear about that. What I learned from that, and the similarities between both Man United and England as well, is that importance of culture at Manchester United, building that at the moment, and the relationship being such an important part of that. Erik ten Hag, for example, setting the rules and the standards, the way of Manchester United, really setting that in stone and seeing that come into fruition throughout each game, and then seeing that with England also, who are kind of a later stage of that. Gareth Southgate has had that time, and you can see that culture and environment built at England already. That's why they put in performances like that against Iran. They do so well in those games. Let me know any comments that you have about what we talked about, maybe as well any questions you have for Dan if we do another episode again. And yeah, thank you for watching and listening as always. Like the video if you could, subscribe if you could, leave a review if you could as well on the podcast. That would be fantastic, and hopefully me and Dad do this maybe 2 or 3 more times before he gets back to working at Man United. That'd be good. But yeah, regardless of that, I will see you again next week.
This is McClaren Performance.